Welcome to the Ravi Padaki Nexus podcast. I'm your host, Ravi Padaki. In this episode, our guest is one of those rare leaders who has operated at the intersection of technology depth, business scale, and transformation impact for over 2 decades. He currently serves as Senior Vice President of Engineering and Country Head, India at Flexera, where he leads functional roles globally in engineering, AI innovation, and strategic growth from one of the most important GCC hubs in the world. But what makes his journey exceptional is the range and substance of what he has built. From scaling high-performance global capability centers from zero to over 1,500 professionals, to launching entirely new AI-led revenue lines for global financial institutions, to leading across engineering, consulting, customer success, product management, and P&L roles, he represents a style of leadership that is increasingly rare, multidimensional, commercially sharp, and execution-proven. His expertise spans FinOps, AI transformation, fintech platforms, cloud modernization, deep tech, and enterprise-scale innovation. He's also been a mentor in India's deep tech ecosystem and an active voice in shaping how enterprises prepare for the next era of AI-powered growth. What I am especially excited about today is that he has led through multiple industry cycles, changing technology waves and organizational reinventions while staying ahead of where the world is going. So if you care about leadership, the future of GCCs, AI transformation, or what it truly takes to build enduring institutions in a volatile world, this conversation is for you. Please help me in welcoming Niladri Ray. Niladri, welcome to my podcast.
Thank you so much, Ravi, for having me part of your Nexus.
You're welcome, Niladri. It's my pleasure and an honor. So, Niladri, I would like to begin with the question, how do you perceive yourself as a leader?
Okay. A data-driven answer to that, a good data-driven answer to that would be to open you up to my 360 report and show you, how there is a piece, right, about, you rate yourself and then your peers rate you, the industry rates you, your stakeholders rate you, and open up to how that looks like. But maybe I'll answer this a bit differently. And the way I would like to answer it is on my belief systems and how I look at change overall. And for as long as I remember, I started my career in '97, so that's close to 30 years in the professional circuit, give or take 4 or 5 companies, 3 of which I kind of crossed in the first 5 years as I was scaling through my engineering and my MBA and trying to sharpen my my wares. And 2 massive stints with 2 companies where I have forever been very obsessed with creating a very resilient organizational nervous system globally. And the way of doing it, the how part of it, is to recognize that there is a voice of a shareholder, there's a voice of the customer, and there's a voice of the team. And when I say the team, I'm talking about the global team. There are tribes and there are teams and there is the ways of working. And the way to create a cultural nuance or a cultural tissue that brings the best of all of it. In a nervous system, stimuli can provoke certain reactions. I believe every individual, every organization, every team has a secret nerve in them, a nerve of excellence. Sometimes that gets triggered by accident or by design, but it can be done by design. I'm a huge follower of Edward de Bono for as long as I have known it. And so the ability to kind of create this network value through these voices and driving this towards unprecedented, unparalleled growth and doing it together has been my North Star. It's a journey. It's a journey that's still shaping up, but I think God's been kind to me. My teams have been exceptional in supporting me altogether. And that has shaped the leadership philosophy as to how I operate. And we can double click on this during the rest of the discussion.
Sure, that sounds very interesting. I would love to double click on the resilient organizational nervous system. What does that mean, and how do you go about building one?
Yeah. So let's back up a bit and maybe lend context to the change imperative and why this is front and center of all of us. So not far back, AWS came in, and if I remember correctly, they launched I think they had the internal launches of AWS in 2004, 2006. Then they went public with S3, EC2, which was probably 2 to 4 years of a timeline. And I think it was probably in that 4 to 6 years, 8 years when they got Netflix as their first global customer and the rest, as I say, is history. So Amazon became the Amazon, over a period of time, and that period is after the dot-com bubble, where a lot of us were still trying to figure out between Y2K and ERP and God knows what, where should careers go. Let's look at the last 6 months itself, right, and the world we stand today, and I think it'll manifest in the conversation we're going to have, right. I think December 25 was when NVIDIA acquired Grok for a massive sum, reportedly for $20 billion probably. NVIDIA was anyway doing very well, but it was obviously competing in the chip segment, and Grok came with obviously Jonathan Ross, who was, I think, the architect of Google's TPU, but brought in this whole thing about LPUs and SRAMs that allowed the chips to be even better, and in a way, Grok was competition. So NVIDIA found a very smart way to do an acqui-hire to be able to go faster, and that acquisition happened. NVIDIA is front and center in terms of what it's doing right now. But on the other end, probably a month back or two, you had a report about Anthropic's ARR having jumped. Obviously, facts to be told is they had a big jump, which is annualized to $10 billion. But long story short, is Anthropic is seeing tremendous versions of cycles of adoption with AI. And from that perspective, as pilots are moving to production, and earlier, we used to say traditional software eats everything else because the marginal cost of bringing a new user was almost zero. You paid for the software, you were done. And now in an AI world, the pyramid is inverting because the marginal cost of bringing a new user is not zero. The costs are non-trivial, and the profitability is deep in the infrastructure stack. There's a reshift in the way organizations are driving change altogether. So leaders, organizations, teams have to be very nimble in the way they operate, in the way they are understanding the economics of value, the economics of technology, AI being a technology economic vector, and what that does do to the self and to the individual and the organization as a whole has multidimensional changes that is non-trivial. Being a high technology user to now being in a responsible position for an organization that is second to none in the Portco circuit and represents the technology universe for the buyers and suppliers globally in terms of looking at your entire technology estate and then being able to drive decisions. So it changes the way you look at things holistically. I'll take a pause there.
That's a fascinating perspective, Niladri. I think that's a good segue into my next question. You have led through two low points in industry cycles, recessionary environments where change became necessary. Could you walk us through some of the key highlights of that journey from the lens of a leader, and what advice would you have for leaders when they face themselves in similar situations?
Yeah, I think the two you're talking about is obviously the financial market crisis of 2008, which nobody, probably after the Great Depression, one of the biggest things to talk about, and obviously we had COVID, and we are right now in a geopolitical, geoeconomic threshold of a potential crisis as well, right? So yes, the topic is timely. So from a leader's lens, again, I'm an avid student of economics and history, and I'm going to go back in time. So a gentleman called Beer Stafford, who, and I think this is the 50s and 70s, he came up with this thing called the Viable Systems Model, or VSM. And long before, the advent of internet and everything else, he talked about, every organization is a non-human intelligence unit. And then he put in 5 layers or 5 systems that he called operations is one. There is coordination, there is control, intelligence, and policy. And he said, every organization has these 5 layers, and typically you see in each, so if your delivery is fantastic, your operational layer is very good, but if you're not looking at the future, your intelligence layer is very weak. Delivery could be very good, but how are you well connected with your voice of the customer and all? Talks about coordination. Control is about repeatable process. Policy is about identity. And in the spirit of a GCC and a leader's lens, I think where we are today, right? The fact that GCCs are growing, the fact that you have been chosen to be a GCC leader is a point of privilege, not a point of entitlement. Because in today's world, with the world being flat, every company has a myriad choices to make. And why I'm saying this is, I have a bit of a problem with this word global capability center. And I've said this in other forums as well. So this is not the first time I'm saying it, because at the end of the day, if an organization has made a decision to represent itself in any region, and you're a GCC leader, and you've been chosen because you've been, to tell the system what to do, not to be told what to do. So that's the first thing to understand. The second thing to understand is that, we have been a bit maniacal to practice this at Flexera as, and part of it, because I also have a functional role along with my India head hat, is how are you indistinguishable in terms of value creation? So you could be anywhere in the world, and there are tax structures to be able to create, structures around transfer pricing and how it operates. But in spirit, are you really indistinguishable? Because every organization will have tribes and will have pockets of knowledge, depending on how they've grown organically, inorganically. So, as a GCC leader, being able to understand the sum of the whole parts is better than its individual parts, and to be able to create catalyzing forces towards value, which is why I think a GCC should be more called a global catalyst creator, because all that you should be doing is you are trying to represent the best of all that you have. I go back to my network value conversation, and the first point is, every individual, every location, every function has got nerves of excellence. How do you stitch this together? And how do you stitch this together, possibly bringing the voice of the customer in the industry, and is where the leaders, prerogative should sit in. I'm privileged to be part of our Flexera SLT, but whether you are not, every GC leader should basically feel that they have a seat at the table, CEO's table, and think like the CEO, which means to be extremely ruthless about unit economics, understanding on one side, understanding how does unit economics translates to ROI or value on the other side, and creating an indistinguishable fabric, a cultural fabric that makes the organization take the best of all that it has to be able to move faster, because market cycles in terms of value creation, as we just talked about, are becoming increasingly shorter.
Fantastic. Some very interesting points there, Niladri. I love the VSM model. Also love the global catalyst creator. I think that's a very interesting view there. So from your vantage point, what separates a traditional GCC from one that truly drives enterprise growth?
The first point would be, having value metrics that translate enterprise growth into what the GCC contributes to would be a nice start to have, because a lot of times we can get lost in head count and how many heads you had and what that does. And I think the best in class GCCs, the best in class organizations that I have had a chance to interact with are the ones that are able to absorb the organizational objectives and goals, in our case OKRs, into their own. So having indistinguishable operating metrics that allow you to be able to see what is the value you create. And the value you create has to be going across the line functions into your customer's environment and the industry ecosystem, right? Because we all are part of a community. Everybody is trying to be the best, right? So obviously speaking, in that kind of environment, there's still space for excellence, there's still space for partner-driven value creation. And I think the competitive moat is to be able to understand how 1 + 1 is equal to 3, and take that giant step function forward. So I think where I've seen, and it may not, you don't sow in the same season as you reap. So there are times when this disproportionate risk may not translate to immediate reward. So there's no immediate gratification out here. We got to maintain. It's a tough job. I don't have any easy paths. There are no free lunches out here. If you're good enough, work will find you. So I have, I also believe in the thing of this whole delicate balance between permission and forgiveness. And some of the best GCCs are highly geared towards bias for action. And they do it in a way that systematically takes the whole organization forward. And even if you fail, it's okay, because you did take the step towards trying to unleash the power of change. right? So, and there are ways to be able to visually manage and look at the metrics that drive that behavior.
What conditions do you see as conducive for somebody to kind of take on that responsibility, and for your parent headquarters to kind of also work with the leadership team here to give you that revenue responsibility?
I don't think there's a straight answer to this, Ravi, honestly, because there are these words which float around ownership and trust and headquarters, and if you're indistinguishable, what is headquarters and what is not headquarters? I mean, I think it's a question to be asked. I can't think of any executive who doesn't want to drive growth, who is not looking at the P&L and is looking at the EBIT. Your EBIT, your ARR, new logos, any innovation you're doing, is it innovation translating to value, are elements of the economic cycle altogether. It's something like this, right? I've been asked this: how do I get to the table? So, and the analogy I give is, in Indian context, any context, right? If you're having a nice dinner and the dinner is fabulous, you will invite the chef to the table. So maybe you start from the kitchen. And yeah, voila, I mean, most of the GCCs and most of the teams are the kitchen. It's a kitchen where all the recipes come together and you are serving out the best dish. So if you serve out the best dish, and what the best dish, is tied to understanding and having an appreciation of what your CXOs are really looking out for, you will get some kind of an entry into the table. And once you have that, you make it count. Then at that point in time, the conversations get bit more difficult, because then, there are no easy paths out there, because at the end of the day, decisions are tied to results, economic results, ROIs, and accountability. Accountability is a very easy discussion to be had. One more book I kind of, and we can talk about this later, is Unaccountability Machine by a gentleman called Dan Davis, and talks about accountability sinks and how AI, you can keep saying the algorithm did this, but something goes wrong. And I spend so much of my time with audits and defensibility and explainability. Is something goes wrong, you can keep looking backwards, but there has to be a human that has to answer this, and taking accountability for that is you can get to the table. To stay on the table is a very different ballgame altogether. So be careful what you wish for.
It's a brilliant analogy. So how are the transformation vectors changing in the age of AI? And if I may add, the value systems model that you mentioned earlier, you see that also in a new perspective in the age of AI?
Yeah. So the VSM is like, it's called a viable systems model. Are you even viable in the first place? So I talked about this whole Anthropic and this NVIDIA and the Grok thing, which has happened over the last few months, right? So cycles are compressing, opening, there's an interesting fact. GitHub has now released a new model. They have this premium request units. They are now moving into a slightly different billing model, which is going to be, again, token based, which means the cost price is going to go up. So there's a whole API stack coming in out there. The industry is shaping itself on the incremental cost of monetizing software altogether. But if I step back, in terms of the VSM, right, and there's a lot of talk around AI native. Okay, and I'm kind of fast forwarding this a bit to talk in the context of where we are today, and where the intelligence layer in that VSM model. I talked about operations, coordination, which is collaboration, control, which are guardrails. Then you've got this intelligence layer, which is looking forward, and then there is policy, which is identity. So this AI native, in my mind, AI native is not about you put AI in the product, a feature, and you then say I'm AI native, or you suddenly put a badge around your I'm using a tool, so I'm an AI native developer. So in my mind, the AI you're creating, how human native is that AI is how AI native are you. So there's a slightly recursive loop, because there's a human in the loop and the human is the loop, and explainability, it comes back to the human finally. How you are training your AI to be human native and understand edge scenarios, understand the game of persuasion, the game of management, understand the game of negotiation, understand the game of getting work done, handling pressure, is where this is going, right? So to answer your question from a VSM perspective, and where I see this, at the moment, I think there is tensions in various parts of an organizational system. There are tensions within every individual also. Let's face it, right? I mean, retirement ages are gone. The education systems and what it's producing and in the context of relevance of what jobs exist are gone. But there are new net things in the industry that are coming up. If you look at new job profiles, you'll see a thing called forward deployed engineer. A lot of job recs are going out there, and it's got a meaning in terms. But what its meaning is, it's coming into what I would call a path of convergence. It's a path of convergence where disciplines are converging. Earlier, if you made a capex decision with software, and you could forget about it, and the CFO was okay, fine, and amortize the spend. And then we said cloud spend, and you were looking at amortizing the cloud spend, and that became an OPEX conversation. Now we are again having infrastructure. We're having data centers in the sky. We're having data centers on the sea. And we talked about the inverted triangle where the profitability is on the compute and the infrastructure is going to the infrastructure layers. So the voice of the CFO, the voice of the CEO, the CBO, the COO, the CIO, all of these voices are converging. Okay. So now you go onto those layers, operations, coordination, control, intelligence, policy. You suddenly see a fusion of all these things right now. Right? NVIDIA took Grok and created this NVIDIA Link. It's created a new kind of a package altogether to be able to drive exponential value. So why am I hinting upon that is that, a leader's conundrum or an organization's conundrum is now to see, we keep saying silos. How do you break the silos and create new operating models? Because a startup that's coming in tomorrow can disrupt you very quickly because it has got no legacy. So enterprises that work with the muscle of the enterprise with the speed of a startup are the ones that are going to do. And in that context, leadership, teams, individuals that are able to grapple quickly with this new reality and find ways of working where you can take a concept. Why is Anthropic's thing shaking up? Because pilots are moving to production. Models are becoming more efficient. Chips are becoming cheaper, right? So Jevon's paradox is driving more adoption, more jobs on this side. But hey, wastage is also going up. The wastage industry is $500 billion industry, probably growing at a CAGR of 30%, 40% out there. So, and this is wastage of cloud spend, which is being exacerbated with the AI spend that is going on top of it. Who's looking at unit economics out there? So I'm giving you a multi-layered answer to the question, and I come back full circle as to why I believe understanding economics is kind of key, understanding business context is kind of key, and putting it all together in the stitch of how an organization is able to drive value becomes ultra key.
Brilliant, very, very interesting, Niladri.
I love the definition of AI native. How human native is AI?
I think that's a very, very unique perspective there. So moving on, Niladri, you have led across engineering, products, GTM, customer success, consulting, and P&L. That breadth is uncommon. So I have two questions around this. My first question is, how does one make a move across disciplines? And how has this helped you in leading organizations and preparing your organization for hard times?
So I think the first question is a bit of intrinsic to every individual's quest for the why. I forever tried to understand, any coding change I did, like, why am I doing this? Who's asked for it? Going into requirement specs and, even before Jira came in, looking at backlogs, looking at which customers asked for it, or the customers asked for it, how are they going to use it, and, So when that happens, when that hunger starts kicking in, then there is no barrier to walking into the office of a CFO or a CEO and asking for clarity, right? What's the worst thing that can happen? You probably sit, wait, whatever, but then you learn. So being a bit shameless, I think, is part of that which comes along with it. If you really are hungry for excellence, you want to learn more, you got to be a bit shameless as well. What's the worst thing that can happen? Somebody will just say, go through the reporting chain or whatever. But I've been doing this for a long time, and I ask my teams to do the same thing, because that's the only way you can start understanding, getting a better appreciation of the why. Also get, I'm a huge fan of The Whole Mind. I think Daniel Pink was the author. You're cultivating your left brain and your right brain, thinking through the whole puzzle of how is work perceived, where does profitability come from, what's the most important thing to do. If I'm working on a work item which nobody's interested in, I'd rather know it up front and finish that quickly and ask for work that is materially important. That's on me. So that's the first part of the answer, and that's the intrinsic thing which cultivates into finding your inner nerve, and it's got no gratification tied to it. There'll be no label given to you. There'll be nothing in terms of expecting an increment or a promotion. It's just tied to the way you work. You want to be better. So that's the first answer. Your second question was, how have we applied this in the organizational context, right? So I think, and this comes back to a bit of the GCC leaders thing, right? I mean, typically we are setting up a GCC. I mean, let's face it, and wherever you are in the journey, it does begin with cost. At the end of the day, it does begin with cost. There are various cost to be had. But what happens is, regardless of which functional line you sit in, the parent would, depending upon success, would want to start leveraging the capability, the catalysis for more functions. So what can begin with engineering can then move to product, then can move into customer success, can move to revenue function, sales. Now, and you start seeing the whole wheelhouse, you suddenly start seeing parts of the puzzle, but are they connected together? Like where my customer is struggling for, or where my renewals team is struggling for renewals, is it tied to what I am delivering on my roadmap? When my customer success is struggling for a customer conversation in terms of what a customer really needs, is it firing up my innovation? And this need not be a GCC capability, it's a global capability altogether. So what we have done in Flexera, and I'm extremely I think happy about this, and kudos to the entire organization for backing it, is to be able to create these muscle, organizational muscle. And why I say muscle is when you go to the gym, there's no pain, no game, right? To build deep muscles of, we run global hackathons. We're just having one right now where it's quite fascinating to see how capabilities that are in Sweden is being matched with, design capabilities in the US, with product acumen in Sweden, with engineering know-how in India, backed with, infra expertise in Australia, is working towards solving puzzles and problems that customers are telling us real time that are in front and center, and we are able to refuel our roadmap, which is very busy, if it's on customers to be able to burst through the pyramid and have customer feedback through it. So I'm very proud of this capability we have created. From an AI point of view, whether it's AI in product or AI ways of working, we are still in our journey, but we have created some strong muscle in terms of global adoption of AI, driving it into productivity. And the AI capabilities we are creating, our customers are adopting it, giving us feedback, and it's helping our customer success teams. It is also helping us define our roadmap. So we are constantly unlearning and relearning. So nothing is perfect, but having been able to create this organizational catalysis vector, I began by saying we are a top decile portco. So it's a position of responsibility. You've got to ensure your EBIT and your ARRs are fine-grained in your operating muscle and be ruthless about it, right? So I said there are no free lunches out here. So to weave that into our ways of working, to be able to have organizational support globally that has happened not by accident but by design overall, and have a situation where each of us feel that every challenge is an opportunity is a blessing, right? So I think we've got there. As I said, it's a work in progress. Flexera is in a very unique position that we get to see the world beyond, across these various verticals of where SaaS sits, where your on-prem IT asset management sits, where your AI workloads sits, where FinOps sits. Our CEO, Jim Ryan, was the first people when the world was still looking at IT asset management and FinOps separately, came back and said the worlds would converge. And would you believe it, last year, Martin Thompson, who runs ITAM Forum, J.R. Stormont, who runs the FinOps Foundation, have joined hands. It's quite coincidental. Even before they joined hands, we in this very office have had a first ITAM workshop in India where we had fantastic that kind of created the genesis of our first customer partner council meets that we are having in India, which is a global movement. And FinOps, which if you look at the last 2 years has really picked up. We now have an active FinOps foundation. We had a FinOps meet much before the foundation was formed. Ishita Vyas is doing a fantastic job with the FinOps chapter in India. FinOps is interweaving itself to the formation of disciplines across all these functions I talked about. So, when you see the industry heading in a particular direction and the organization heading in a particular direction, and these are aligning, I have a seat on the FinOps Foundation. There are a couple of white papers I was privileged to author with a lot of the top brass of stakeholders globally around FinOps for AI and AI spend management. You feel good. You feel your intellectual horsepower is going towards solving deep problems, which is where we want our real value to be there, and the hard problems. So once you've done that bit, those are the hard yards. Then the rest of it should automatically flow. And if it doesn't flow, then you make tweaks in the 5 layers and figure out which layers need to be tweaked in. So as Flexera, I think we've got a lot of things right. It's a journey in progress, and we just have one vision, is to move this into a flywheel where we can make this foundation for further acceleration and growth.
Amazing. I love that customer partner council. I think that's fantastic. So Niladri, you're part of the senior leadership team at Flexera. You represent AI for Flexera globally and an active industry voice internationally as well. How would you describe AI adoption at Flexera, and what opportunities and challenges are you seeing?
So I think, again, this journey, we've been a bit pragmatic about how we go about it and have spent some time thinking through this. So what we've done is, so there are two parts. There's AI ways of working, the AI wow as we call it, and there is AI in product. And what we've done is we've taken a parallel stab at both, and both are kind of cross correlated. And I also talked to you about the customer vector we've done, because our customers are sticky with our solutions, but they are expecting a lot of the operational pain to go with AI capabilities that we feed in. And these are I can tell you, these are very interesting problems that we are discussing with the customers. And I'm pretty in the world of the way software is being monetized today and distributed, and you don't know if the software being consumed is being consumed by an agent or a human. And you'll be surprised to know that a lot of the enterprise software that is out there, organizations don't have clear visibility in terms of what their technology real estate looks like and how many versions of software are out there, and which probably are end of life and a potential next CrowdStrike vector. So there's security, sustainability aspects coming in out there. So Flexera gets to see that all. And obviously with the speed at which new software is coming in out there, the licensing aspects of it, what was contracted, there are pages and pages of contracts. Who's spinning up a server, who's spinning down a server, and why is infrastructure getting commissioned? Can you potentially look at cross saves, for example? If you could bring your own license from an on-prem to the cloud, it would be probably cheaper than pay as you go. It's a kind of cross use case. So there are a lot of things that are kind of materially changing the way customers look at this. So what we have done in Flexera is we've been very disciplined in trying to work with our customers around which use cases really matter, and try to figure out ways and means to be able to white glove with them and partner with them and bring it into our product roadmap thoughtfully. Because when you have a roadmap that's representing 50,000 customers and more, there's a lot that is going on out there. You want to offer it for the best value, right? We talked about this in the beginning. There's no point giving a feature which nobody else uses or uses and then goes away, right? I'll give you a simple thing about forecasting, right? We've got this FinOps forecasting module, and you can start projecting your spends, and you can go deep into organizational budget units and at infrastructure units and see what happens out there. And what is that doing? That is allowing you to promote decisions to be able to act upon them, which comes back to policy. So if I have a lot of wastage in a particular part of my infrastructure, then why am I even using it? Can I just, a lot of people are going into data lakes, bringing the data. There's a cost to bringing all the data together. And who's looking at COGS? So we've been thoughtful about AI economics, on that. We've also been thoughtful about AI ways of working, where we are equipping everybody in the teams, engineering and other functions, to have a thoughtful adoption of the best tools. So we've tried to lace a lot of context into that, and so The tools we are adopting, we've been thoughtful about having subject matter experts who are really good with their trade to impart that knowledge to the AI to be human native so that AI is replicating what the subject matter expert would know. And we've created some muscle memory movements, catalyst teams, pilot pods around that. And what that is doing is it's able to start now freeing up organizational capacity to drive speed to value faster. And the capacity we create, we're directing that towards innovation and bringing in new products to the market. Now, this has caught up speed. In Flexera today, 90% of our engineers are equipped with the tools that really matter. And we keep score on outcomes, not output. You walk across this, you see one of our values is keep score. So we are being, again, ruthlessly thoughtful about the fact that, every engineer, every team understands this, this is an additional capacity. A course is given to you, but you are still the human in the loop. You're finally accountable. There has to be explainable AI out there and drive meaningful outcomes. The final part of it is the COGS. Okay, I will not name this company. This is one of the leading companies in the world. They ran some data and they found that the cost of running tokens for any engineer globally is a non-trivial number. And if you've ever put your hand on a chip that is burning an AI model, it is hot. There are sustainability scope 1, scope 2, scope carbon emission forecasting implications that you got to think about depending on where you stay in the world. So we've thought through this whole 9 yards both, and we are also trying to eat our own dog food. But I'm very excited about the journey. We're trying to put all these parts together. We've got organic and inorganic parts of our DNA that are moving faster, slower, stronger. We are being very thoughtful about it. The organization understands, the change is imminent and we need to drive value faster. And all of us are hooked into that. And we're trying to kind of ensure that in that 5 layers thing, when policy is about identity, the organization understands and every individual understands the role they play in this collective movement. Our customers voted for one feature which was probably a bit lower and we are prioritizing that. And it's a very exciting one. And, application sprawl with AI. And, there's application sprawl, there's model sprawl, there's AI sprawl because, how would companies know how many different applications you're using for messaging or for diagramming or for design or coding, right? And is there a best use of one versus the other depending on separate contexts, right? Not, a model could be fantastic, a cloud model could be fantastic, but is that relevant to your use case? Would a lower model work? Okay, so there are these things about, inferencing and production and so on and so forth, and application sprawl, inference management. Some exciting areas are coming up from our leading customers, and I'm very excited about the fact that we're getting to put them into the concert of co-creation, and we'll see where this plays out.
That's fantastic. It's very powerful, deep perspectives and innovative approaches as well. So I think we'll now go to the last section, the closing section. What are the top 3 skills you look for when hiring young leaders at Flexera?
Yeah. So one thing, so we still do grad batches. We've got agents right now that are ready for taking prime time work, which our senior engineers would do, and that frees up our senior engineers to do more context. We're still hiring graduates. And one thing, I sit with the graduates every year and I tell them one thing, which I said, I've hired you to tell me what to do, not for me to tell you what to do, which I kind of began with in the beginning. Because I do believe this Gen Z, this Gen Alpha is a very different, skill set. My son, for example, who's got an economics and history background, chose to go a different way. And today is co-founding a venture on renewable energy, green hydrogen technology, because he understands, some of the, he's not got the deep understanding of the business, but appreciation of the business context enough to know that, using the tools you have today, Replit and so on and so forth, you can create, applications very quickly. But what and the why is important. So, so I think the first thing that comes is context, and that's where I come back is, spending time with various executives to understand the business context of the firm and what's driving the firm's bottom line and top line. Also the context of, every team have got tacit and non-tacit knowledge sitting in Jira and Confluence, and there's working knowledge about support tickets and all that, right? So there is data already out there which are like ready starter kits in terms of, so that context is kind of key. The second part about context would be application of context, right? So finding problems. So I might have a fantastic resume and I might have done 1500 different tools, but if I've not applied it to real problems, then I have only theoretical knowledge, right? So ability to find problems, and a good organization would be able to find the mechanism to be able to give problems of increasing complexity, and depending upon the individual, the team's skill and scale, you start getting higher problems. And the problem, again, like work would find the best who do the work, problems would find the best who want to find problems to solve for. So finding problems, I think, are important to solve for, getting yourself into that. And number three to me, which is the most important thing which I hire for, and it's part of my unlearning and learning every day, is curiosity. I think the World Economic Forum has top 5 skill sets for the future. So curiosity is something which to me is paramount in terms of what I look for and what I think should be bred into everybody's setup. And it comes back to a bit of being shameless too.
Got it. Would you have any specific advice for GCC leaders or people who want to step into GCC leadership roles?
I think I'll begin with the fact that is to begin with the fact if you've been selected for the role. First and foremost, you don't have to prove yourself. Being selected for the role is a privilege. The organization is expecting you to tell them what to do, and it can manifest in different directions. There will be expectations set based on what the immediate priorities are, and you got to, if FinOps we say crawl, walk, run. Everything's got a journey of its own. So there is some amount of the hard yards to be done to have work do the talking. It's like in cricket we say the bat should do its talking. So there is amount of I would say, while there may not be much to prove, there's credibility to be built, because at the end of the day, every organization has choices to go. The best work will find itself. So my only input and suggestion would be that I think, and having spent a lot of time with a lot of GC leaders, I think everybody comes with a very unique skill set. But the important thing is, one of my favorite books is Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. Sometimes we come in and we'd say, oh man, the situation looks very, I already know it and I can go for it, right? But the ability to kind of take a pause and let systems thinking to lean in and allow yourself to respect the organizational's pulse, the culture, the DNA, and the context, and then diagramming your moves and the risks you take, working the balance between permission and forgiveness, and taking accountability, I think, is the most important thing. And it's a tough thing to scale, because one of the things I've tried to practice is, I talked about this at the beginning, is a leader's prerogative is to be indistinguishably distinguishable. Okay, so it's the speed of influence. In the operating world we have today, no org structure would be perfect. There are matrices everywhere around, and to understand and appreciate the nuance of that, and just to be a bit more ruthless in terms of getting an understanding of what drives the biggest buck is kind of key, and how to figure out a way to take the whole organization along with you. And taking the whole organization might be an aspirational statement, but again, you crawl, walk, run towards that.
Fantastic, Niladri. I think that was an amazing, extremely insightful discussion with you. I would like to now close the session. Thank you so much for your time. I deeply appreciate your time and for sharing all your wisdom and insights. And thank you for breaking down the complexity in running a GCC, a powerful GCC like what you're doing at Flexera. So thank you so much, Niladri. And anything you would like to share in closing?
No, Ravi, thank you so much for having me. I have seen your earlier podcast, and I truly appreciate the network muscle that you're trying to create. I think it's important because I think we all learn from each other. The good thing is there's no perfect recipe. We can talk a lot of things that can be done, but one thing that is to stay humble, stay foolish, because it's okay to even say I don't know. Not everybody knows the answer, but if you don't try, you wouldn't know, right? So I see your honest endeavor in trying to shape in stories, uh, best practices, case studies, and sometimes what has not worked is also a best practice. To be humble, to be able to kind of put it out there as well. So just want to thank you again, and all the best for the future.